Hello, thank you for joining me for another Excel video. And in this video, I am going to teach you something very cool where you can not only find the value in a list, kind of like VLOOKUP, but more importantly, you can find the location of that value. So you can see which row, which column it is. VLOOKUP will only give you the value, it won't give you the location. But we're going to play around with a couple of new formulas to put them together so that they can give us that answer. This is truly one of those things that I keep on saying where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, because we're just creatively joining and mixing in together different formulas. So first of all, open up Excel if you want to follow along, or if you just want to watch, that's cool. I need to add some data, just some dummy data. So I'm going to highlight from A1 to A10. I'll go equals rand between, and let's do from 1 to 100. Control Enter. There are my numbers. I'm going to copy paste values because I don't want these changing since it's a random function. I don't want them changing every time I change something. So those are the numbers. Okay, they're just changed. Not a big deal. But let's do a quick little example of what we're going to do. If I wanted to know the position of the number 72, I couldn't do that with VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP will only give me the actual answer if there was one or more columns or just one column. But what we're going to do is we're going to find the location that it'll give me a 7. Now, in order to get that, there's a couple of steps we have to follow and a couple of formulas you have to understand. So I'm going to take the long way around and I'm going to show you all of the constituent formulas and then we're going to put them together. Okay? So the first formula that you need to get a handle on is sum product. Sum product is almost like sum if and some ifs. And actually, that's what we used before sum if was ever invented by Microsoft. And although a lot of the functionality of sum product has been superseded by sum if, this particular case, you got to use sum product. It's going to sound a little bit weird, but it really isn't. So what sum product does is that it will take the sum of all of the products of a number. For example, watch this. I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to type in 2 and I press Control Enter. Okay, so over here in column C, I'm going to do A times B, right? So it's 7 times 2 gives me 14. I'm going to drag this down. So what I have done is I've taken the product of A and the product of B, and then at the bottom, I'm going to do alt equals. That gives me the sum. So this is basically kind of like a weighted average. Because if I put a 1 here or a 15 here, I'd assign different weights. So this is your weighted average if everything had an equal weight. Sum product does this right here without having to do all of this. So it saves a lot of work. I'm going to come over to E2 and I type in sum product, open the parentheses, open the parentheses again. Now this is the first range to multiply. So this range will be A1 to A10, close that parentheses, do a multiply, oops, not an 8, do the multiply, because I need to multiply them inside, do another parentheses, select that guy there. Now, one thing before we finish, I'm going to stop, I'm going to pause, and it's going to be a little bit confusing, because if you follow what it says here, it says you have to put a comma and you erase. Don't do it that way. Do it this way with the parentheses. It might be a little bit more tedious, but it's more powerful. So I'm not following our little cheat sheet. I'm following just the way that we usually used to do it. Excuse me. Now I'm going to close the parentheses, and I'll have to close the parentheses again. So what I'm saying is take all of A1, A10, multiply it times B1, B10. And I press enter, and I get exactly 1410. Because all in one, it is doing all of the multiply on a row by row basis. It's doing the multiplication, which is the product, and then getting the sum. So it's the sum of the product, hence the name Sumproduct. Okay? What is going on behind the scenes? This might be a little bit too much data, but let's see if we can figure it out. I'm going to highlight the first parentheses in the formula bar. I'm going to press F9, and notice it gives me an array, 7, 77, 95, which are these exact numbers. Okay, not a big deal. Then I'm going to highlight the second parentheses, the second range, pardon me. Press F9, and now that gives me all of the twos. So what this does is on a row by row basis, it takes 7 times 2, 77 times 2, 95 times 2, so on and so forth. It multiplies them and then it adds them all in one step. So you have saved yourself a lot of calculation time by using Sumproduct. All right, that was the basic use of Sumproduct. So now we know what it does. But let me show you the first hack of Sumproduct. I'm going to delete all of this data except for my raw data, which is in column A, so that's good. So in the beginning of this video, I said we, the Excel people, used to use Sumproduct as a proxy for SUMIF before SUMIF existed. So we wanted to sum by multiple criteria. Excel couldn't do it. Some very smart people figured out how to use Sumproduct for that, and I'm going to teach you how to do that. So let's pretend over here in column B, I'm just going to put Y, Y, Y. I'll put a couple of N's, another Y, and a few N's. So now, in a formula, before some ifs with an S, we could not easily figure out what is the sum of all of the Y's, what is the sum of all of the N's. So that's why we use Sumproduct. And the syntax is almost the same, but just a little bit different. I'm going to give myself a little bit more room. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to go equals Sumproduct, okay, open parentheses, the numbers that we're going to multiply, this is the same, close parentheses, do the multiply, open parentheses, the range of the criteria, but I can't close it yet because if I close the parentheses, really what I'm doing is I'm going to say multiply 7 times y. That makes absolutely no sense. Excel will have a hissy fit. But what I'm going to do is, since I want the sums of the y's, I'm going to say B1 colon B10 equals y. That's a little bit weird. I'll explain it in a bit. Just follow along. I'm going to close the parentheses, close again, and now I press enter, and those are the sums of the y's. Let's go ahead and check. 311. Perfect, which is actually a nice band. Okay, so those are the sums of the y's. What is going on? How does this work? Well, first I'm going to do it visually, and then I'll show you with the F9 trick. So visually, this is what's happening. Sumproduct is taking this number, and I'm just going to copy it over here just so we can see, right? So it takes that number in that first array of A1 to A10. Now here's where the magic happens. Whenever you do a comparison in Excel, the comparison is either true or false, whether it is a Y, whether it is not a Y. So what ends up happening is a true is a 1 and a Y is a 0. So I'm sorry, I completely messed that up. A true is a 1 and a false is a 0. So if something is equal to Y, it's going to give us a 1. So these first three rows have a 1. These next rows have a 0 because it's an n. Then I got two more 1s, and then I have an n. Now I'm just going to go ahead and move this out of the way because I want more room. So this is what Sumproduct is doing. It's creating this array in memory. It's doing this comparison against y, because that's what we have here, right? It's converting it to a 1 or a 0. Then it does a row by row multiplication, and every time you multiply something by a 0, it's what? It ends up being 0, so it drops out. And now it does the sum. So that's how you can do conditional sums using Sumproduct. You don't have to do that right now because you have SUMIF, but Sumproduct has more flexibility than SUMIFs, okay? So that's what's going on here. The other way you can check is we do the F9 trick. So I highlight that, do F9, and I highlight this, and I do F9, and I should see a bunch of true, 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 false, false, false. So the first three are true because they are y's, and false, false, false for the ends, true, true, false. So it goes 7 times true, which is really a 1, and which is a 7. So this is basically what we've done here in what column is this? In column F. So you got the hang of it? So that's how you do comparisons. And you can add as many comparisons as you want, as long as they end up being true or false. It doesn't have to be an equals. It can be something like less than 30 if we had numerical values in B, and then you just keep on adding multiplication, so you can add as many conditions as you want. Okay, so that's what we want to cover for Sumproduct. You got the hang of it. We know how to use it. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete this. So let's see. This is now garbage. I'm going to delete this too. Now what we want is the position. I need the position. I need the position of 72. That's going to be our token number for this example. We're going to use the row function. If I do row and I point to A2, oops, row open parentheses, and I point to A2, it will give me the number 2 because that's the row of cell A2. If I do the row and I do not put anything inside the reference, the parentheses, it's going to give me the row of itself, and that'll be a 7. And I can drag it down and you have 8, 9, 10. So that's the first thing we're going to use. We're going to use Sumproduct, but instead of having it something equal to a yes or a no or a number, we're going to multiply it times the row. So what it's going to do is it is going to say 7 times 1, 7 times 77, I'm sorry, 77 times 2, 95 times 3, so on and so forth. Okay? So what we're going to do is select a cell that's just going to hold our target value. And I'll just do right here, G2, and I'm going to go ahead and where's my cell styles? I always like to go ahead and highlight it. That's a nice blue, and we'll put 72. That's what we're looking for. So right here, I'm going to return the row of 72 using Sumproduct. Equals Sumproduct. Open parentheses again. The range of interest, let me move this out of the way, where it's equal to G2. So wherever anything here is going to be equal to G2, it's going to give me a true or a false. Remember, I don't really care about the number itself. The number is in G2. I'm looking for the position of the row. But I need to get the row, and the way that you get the row is you multiply times row. Open, close parentheses, and close that. So that gives me 2. Why does that give me 2? So let's debug it. I'm going to highlight this here, and I'm going to say F9. Everything is false except for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the seventh one. Okay. And then row, press F9, that gives me 2. Oh, well, that's obvious. Why does it give me a 2? That was a dumb mistake. Because when I do row, open, close parentheses, I'm in H2. I don't want to multiply everything times H2. That was a dumb mistake. So let me go ahead and just delete all of these parentheses. I want to multiply it times the iterative row of A1 through A10. So I need the row of A1 through A10. Close parentheses, close parentheses. And now I have 7. So far so good, but let me test it. Let's do 95. 95 should give me 3. All right, so far so good. So let's go back to 72. So now I have the row. I'm just going to label it. Once again, once you get the hang of this, you can do this in one step. We're going step by step just so you can understand. So we have the row. Now we just need to get the column. Well, it's not that difficult. It's actually almost the same formula that we're looking at right now, but instead of using row, you use column. Now, it just so happens there's only one column. But let's make this a little bit more interesting, shall we? Let's add some more numbers so we can really test this out. So I'm going to add some numbers. I'm going to highlight from B1 over to D10. I'm going to do equals ran between, let's do, once again, we'll do 1 to 100. Close parentheses, control enter. All right, cool. We should not have any, we do have some duplicates. We'll change some duplicates because I don't want duplicates. It's going to mess everything up. And I'll show you how to do that really quickly. I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste values. Now I know that there's some duplicates here, but I'm not going to sit there and check. I'm going to let the computer do the hard work for me. I'm going to highlight this area. I go into conditional formatting, highlight cell rules, duplicate values. Oh, there's a lot of duplicates. Okay. And light red fill with dark text. Cool. Hit OK. Let's just change them. So I'll make this a 1. I'll make this a 2. I'll make this a, do I have a 73? Okay, I'll make this 47. No, it was 47. 88. 29, we'll do 12. All right, everything's unique. We're good. Now we want the column. So we know that 72 is in row 7. Now we have to get the column. So I'm going to go ahead and just use the same formula. I'm going to copy it from up here in the formula bar, press escape, paste it here, but I don't want the row, I want the column. So that gives me row 7, column 1, which is correct. Okay, but let's change, let's look for number 9. So now if I do number 9, well, it's having a hissy fit. It doesn't know what it's doing because, not that we did anything wrong, but we're looking from A1 to A10 and A1 to A10 for the row. What we really want is from A1 to D10. So you can actually do this. Yes, Sumproduct will work on multiple columns. That's where it gets really cool. And you press enter. 9 is on row 7. And now column, once again, I want from A1, I want it to D10. and A1 to D10, and that gives me the third column. Let's do something that's completely different. We'll do 48. Why not? Okay, I got row 10. That's awesome. And the fourth column. And let's just do 100. Row 2, column 3. We could stop here, because this gives us the actual address. But we have to count. And what happens if you have a really, really long data set with 200 columns or 300 columns? Yeah, remember, Excel now has 16,000 columns, and you can fill it up with numbers and data. You don't want to be counting up to 16,000 or highlighting. Let the computer do the hard work. So the other function that I'm going to teach you is the address function. And the address function does exactly what you think. It gives you the address, but check this out. Look at our little cheat sheet. It gives you the address based on the row number and the column number. You can also do some optional things about absolute and sheet text, but don't worry about that. We just want the row number and the column number, and we kind of already have that. So let's build it step by step. So I'm going to first just point to the actual cells of interest. So the row is over here in H2. Move this out of the way. And then I press a comma, and the column is in I2. So now I close that, and now I see that 100 is in C2, and it absolutely is. Well, where is 73? 73 is in C5. Now let's put everything together, shall we? So I'm going to use a different cell so we don't mess up all of our work in case we get confused. I'm going to copy the address and I'll just put it over here. Okay. Now where it points to H2, I want that formula. I don't want the value. So I go to H2, I copy the sum product without the equal sign, and I put it in the H2. I paste it. I still got C5, we're good. And now here instead of I2, I do the same thing. Copy this sum product and paste it here where the I2 is inside the address. And now once we're sure that it works, let's do 14. So 14 is in B10, and it actually is in B10. Now if we wanted to, you can just delete these because we don't need them. All we have is right here. So here, and I'm just going to move it over here. So now I know that 14 is in the B10. So how could you really use this? Well, what about if you wanted to know, for example, the maximum value of a range of numbers? Oh man, I messed up. Equals max. And you highlight the maximum value. Now you know that the maximum value is 100 and it happens to be in C2. What about if I wanted to know the minimum? The minimum is 1 and it's in B4. So anything like that that's unique, you can find. It has to be unique, because if it's not, then the sum product will return more than one value, right? This sum product, if it's not unique, it will return two numbers and it'll sum them up, and that's not what you want. It has to be unique, and you'll find the address of that unique one. If you have two numbers and you want to find those two numbers, you got to build a pivot table, or you have to use the new array formulas in Excel, like for filter, but that's a whole nother video. But basically, if you have a number, you want to find that number, the location, you can build it incrementally, step by step, using sum product to get the row, using sum product to get the column, and then stick those sum products inside of an address, and it gives you the address based on the row and column number. All right, I hope you got it. I hope this helps, and thank you for joining me. I'll see you in the next video.